All right, welcome to Modulo 2, part 2 of uh, Modulo 2. That is, in this particular video, we'll be talking about the principle of graphic design. Like I said, it may look boring, it may be boring, but please, it is very important that you pay attention to this particular aspect. It is this particular video will decide whether you end up as a professional or just another graphic design user. You see the difference between some graphic designer and then, okay, let me just use it this way. The difference between a real graphic designer and then a business center graphic designer. I don't know whether you get what I mean. And I saying this with all respect for people working in business center. Their design is always different. Now, one thing that I want you to understand about these people is that when you are talking about skills and operating the softwares they use, these people are highly skilled, very very professional in Corel Draw and Photoshop. But the problem is they don't have this particular knowledge. That is, they don't know the principle of graphic design. It is when you don't know, you misuse your element. Now this particular principle is actually, in summary, it is the principle of, it is simply the way in which the elements we discussed in the other video are used together. And that's where problem mostly coming for a lot of graphic designers, especially beginners. Most institute online offer graphic design training, but mostly go straight to using the softwares. It is very important you understand this particular aspect because it is this deciding part. It's either you learn this one or you learn it in later, but you will have to learn it before you can be a professional. And that is why we want you, while learning it, to learn while learning graphics, to start with this knowledge in mind. This will save you a lot of trouble of having to go back later on to learn this thing. Now, in graphic designs, there are rules that can be considered. These rules, forgive me, my slide, I think I mistakenly dragged this thing up. Okay, now these rules that are considered while designing is what we refer to them as the principles of designs. Now, this principle, there are thousands, sorry, not thousands, there are a lot of principles. Now, these principles are put together by different graphic designer at different level, but mostly there are some basic principle, foundational principle, and this is what we will be looking at in this particular class. We'll be looking at the basic and foundational principles. All right, so forgive me for the noise. The location is a little bit noisy today. All right, I will try to ensure this does not repeat itself, so please, I beg your pardon here. All right, so I was talking about the principle. Now, these principles all have relationship between each other and appear in every well-designed piece of work you see. Any design you see that is very well, there is a principle behind it. Don't just assume that the person wakes up and does things anyhow. I'm telling you, there is a principle, whether consciously or no, unknowingly. There is a principle that is guiding this design. So most of the time, people operate without this principle, and that is why the design is very disorganized. All right, so I think one of the problem that people face in graphic design is that they would mostly complain that they are not creative. And the issue is that most of the reasons why people are not creative is because they don't know the principle. When you know the principle, you can actually follow the principle to create something new. Okay, so I was talking about this principle coming from a lot of people, but I was mentioning, if I recall correctly, I mentioned something about foundational principle. Now, this foundational principle almost appear in all the principles you can find, and according to me, like I said, there are maybe other suggestions out there, but according to me, these are principles that I used and by some professional designers that I know that are even better than me. So number one, among the principles we have movement, then secondly we have balance, and we have emphasis, and we have contrast, alignment, proximity, simplicity, and function. When we bring both the visual element and the design principle together, it is when we have graphic design. Now I will explain to you why in this particular slide, why this text were kept in this side and then the picture was on the other side. Okay, so stay with me for a minute. All right, so now when this principle and then the elements of design are put together is when you have a graphic design. And when this principle is used properly, you have a professional and very good and an amazing design. Okay, all right, so I notice I'm too serious. Okay, please feel free. If you have question, please you can ask. And also I would recommend while you are watching the videos, you take a paper in case and be taking down your question, because I don't know about you, but sometimes maybe while watching a tutorial I may see a question, I may have a question, but before the end of the class, the video, I will forget it. So it's good to jot it down and then you can ask it anytime. All right, then let's look at the first principle, which is movement. Now this is the use of lines, colors, and repetition to create the illusion of motion. You know, if you remember in our, when we are looking at the specialities within graphic design, I mentioned one area, one particular, I don't know whether it was mentioned there, but there is one more specialty called the motion graphics. Now this mostly has to do with create graphic designs that pass an image of motion. That is, it makes the design, it creates an illusion of your design in motion. So by looking at the design, you can perceive or assume that the design is moving. Example is the design by my right here. You look at the design, it's just like this particular bird is like swimming, maybe bathing, maybe. Okay, so this particular design, when you look at it, the first thing that comes to your mind is that this particular animal is moving. That's the use of line, the movement. And then it can be used either in straight lines or in curve forms, and then repetition of geometric forms, fuzzy lines, etc. Now this fuzzy, okay, let me not talk much on the fuzzy lines. You can check on it as your assignment. I notice we don't have much classwork or assignment. All right, so the second one we'll be talking about is balance. Now this is the art of comparing or estimating two things, one against the other, and the contrast between them. Empty white space and filled space, text and image, colors and no colors, and different color, texture against flat colors. Now this balance mostly has to do with perception. You know, in every design, a design should be balanced. One thing shouldn't be used more than, you know, when you have design, then something that is overused, and then it creates disbalance, and then this balance creates a pull off emotion for your clients or people looking at that particular design. Let me, okay, I was looking for one picture. Ahem. Okay, now I will talk more on the balance when I'm talking about alignment. So will just move to the next one. You know more, I will explain the balance more with alignment together. The next thing is emphasis. Now this is to express which particular stress, with particular stress or force. Now this emphasis, remember I will talk about size in the element, So now this particular emphasis make use of that element of the size in design to express the idea that this is what I'm trying to pass, and that is what emphasis is. Now let's look at these two images here. Now if you look at this particular design, the solar and then the logo of the solar system mapping, it's actually big. They are very, the size are used, their size were increased to a large stage in order to create the idea or to pull your mind to the aspect that this is what I want you people to notice. And then the other design, let's look at some of the design from our graphic teams. Now if you look at this particular design, we made use of size as well to express what we are trying to do. You know, in this whole design, before you stress yourself or do anything, the emphasis there by the design and application of size already tells you that colors or DMOs is what we are trying to pass. So when you see this one, it track your attention. Like let's say I'm going through a design and I was just flipping. Now emphasis, what emphasis does is that it drag your attention back. It ensures that before you pass, you at least pick something there. So as a graphic designer, always make sure you emphasize, there is an emphasis in your design to pass what you are to pass the real message of your design. Remember, graphic design is an idea expressed, so emphasis is what ensure that idea is expressed properly. Then the next thing is contrast, and this contrast is directly linked with colors. Now this contrast, before I talk on the contrast itself, now sometimes you may use the right combination of color, but if your contrast is not well balanced or well used, it still destroy, or should I say tarnish, your work completely. So now, but in graphic design, contrast is actually the difference between two or more elements in a composition. This is the ability for you to differentiate two elements. You know, sometimes in some designs you make use of similar colors. Let's say for example, photographers, I don't know if whether you come across a picture, the person was wearing blue and then the background was blue. It is contrast that was used. It is through the use of contrast that you can be able to tell that this is her clothes, this is her shirt, or this is his shirt, and then the other one is his background. So that is the purpose of the contrast, especially when you are trying to use it to make a design that has similar color. This contrast is very very good, and this contrast also makes use of what we call shadow as well. We'll learn more when we start practical. Please, like I said, please remember this particular modules, that is one and two, it was meant to groom you, sorry, into a professional graphic designer. I know knowing the how to use the tool is important. Some of you are already a good graphic designer, they just want to learn some specific tools. But please get this particular aspect. And also if you have questions, you can ask while we are going. All right, so now back to balance and alignment. Now every element you place on a page has a weight. The weight can come from color, size, or texture, just like I was explaining earlier on when I was talking about the balance. You know, you can't put, assuming you have furniture in your corner in your room. Let's say you build a house, you can't move all the furniture in one side of the room. You know, it makes the room completely dull. Like everything in your room is in one corner and the other corner is completely empty. The same thing goes with the graphic design. You can't crowd all your heavy elements in one area. Without balance, your audience will feel as if their eye is sliding off a page. Now, let's look at this particular design. The people were balanced very well. See how the balance was used. The people that were kept, they were kept in balance, although the mountain is a bit sliding, but because of how balanced it was, if you look at the pictures, all the people are balanced. All right, so forgive me for the noise in the background. All right, so that's how important a graphic design is. The most important thing I want people to know in the graphic designs, your design should be balanced and aligned. Let's say if you are making use, if you are trying to pass an information, let's say a particular event, and then date, time, and everything. You don't keep date here and then time completely another where, then another different place, and then venue completely different. You are stressing the eyes and the focus of your client. Align them in one place. What is relating to one another should be aligned in one place, and what are not related should be put together as well. We will know more in proximity. Okay, we are already here. Now, this is one of the proximity. That is the next principle. The principle of proximity, that is the law of proximity. This is one of the most important grouping principle of design. This involves placing related elements close together and separating unrelated elements together to another side as well. Now, this is very important, especially for those who venture into UI, that is user interface design. I'm sure over the time you must have come across some designs where you see all these dot are mostly used. Now, these are mostly what describes the proximity. You see that in some design, these shapes to make your design good. Some graphic designer, what we do is that we create some shape, either triangle, squares, or rectangles or circles, and then we align them in close proximity, and then after alignment, this thing will now look and add more feel and touches to your design. We will learn and practice it when we start our practical. Now, the last principle I want us to learn is, and very very important, is simplicity. Please, as a graphic designer, the earlier you know that simplicity is what design is, the is it, how do they put the statement, know this and know peace, abi? My don't mind me. All right, so the earlier you know this, the earlier you enjoy peace. When it comes to graphic design, simplicity is the key. Don't overdo. Keep things simple and it to look professional. That's why I didn't write anything here. I just picked some few two designs to explain it here. Now, ideally, if you go to any business center, there is nothing on any of these design that none of them can do. But the problem is that the mentality behind keeping design simple is what is missing. You see, they give background, this thing, create this shape, add it, create that, add it. Let's look at the first design. The first design has only one icon that was twisted. That is Boss Baby. I think that's the name. And then the remaining thing that just takes an icon, and there is nothing much. The other more thing that was used to make a difference in this design is that line. You remember the line I explained in the element of graphic design? It was used to create a pattern which now makes the design looks perfect. And then texture, so the contrast was used around this triangle to separate the main white background and the white in the main design. That's one of the ways or uses of contrast. Okay. Then if you look at the other flyer, still the other, this one makes use of emphasis. If flyer, you are seeing, the more you come to this design, the first thing you notice is that this is flyer. And then this particular face design, when you are trying to pass, you first I'm very certain there is no way you can see this design without seeing this hello graphic designer. Okay, and this is what emphasis does. And then if you look at this board design, one thing is certain is that they are simple. We'll get to design something like this during our classes, especially Photoshop. And we must design something similar. That is a must, and we'll learn how to do it. We'll not just ask you to design what we've not taught you how to do. So don't worry much about it. You get to know how to do it now. But what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that in this particular designs, simplicity what was was what gave this design the quality and then the professionality it has now. This design can be designed, sometimes you realize some people are there taking too much time to design. Now if you look at this design, if I ask someone, by the time we are done with this class, if I ask you to design something like this is something you can do in less than 10 to 15 minutes at worst. You see, that's the power of simplicity. You just make something simple and then design. That's why this particular class is very important. Without this particular class, the mentality that we'll have is I want to design, I want to design, and as such you'll be going out with heavy designs. Please, it is very important that we pay attention to these things. I will be the reason why I'm teaching us this particular module is because when practicals begins, I will be making reference to them a lot. So please, um ensure that you pick out some things here. Don't just watch. Don't waste your time by watching only. Watching, is it skimming, forwarding and all these things. Please be focused, take time and go through it. Okay, so that is it for today's class. Thank you very much. It was wonderful to have you and to teach and to talk with you. And in that regards, after this class, after this video, please, when you are done with it, you can send in your video, your questions. I'm still online. Remember, I said there will always be 10 to 15 minutes for questions and answer. So you can drop your questions, please. You can drop your questions. That will be for all. And I've already posted the timetable. We will meet as scheduled again for our next class. And then, like I said earlier in the first class, that after each module will try and fix a Zoom meeting to see if we can do some follow-up. So please, tomorrow we'll have a 30-minute Zoom meeting, and by the time schedules, if there is a change in the time, I will let you know. Sorry, on Sunday, not tomorrow. On Sunday is the next class, I believe so. So please try and make sure you are in a place that has strong light so that we can see and talk to each other. Also, please, you can go over through the videos again and again if you are not sure of something, and you can always ask your question. And then I will be sending in your registration ID before the next class. Please take note of it and save it. And if you are okay, that's all for today. Thank you, and see you in our next class.